As a youth, I was tormented by the question, what is the meaning of life? And by that I mean, what is the reason for existence? I could see that a lot of people find a sense of meaning and purpose in their lives by achieving some accomplishment, or raising kids, or making a discovery, or expressing love, perhaps by following the rules of their religion, or by improving the world in some way, or building for future generations, or acting upon any of our life-perpetuating evolutionary impulses. But to me, anyone who thought that was the meaning of life didn't really understand the underlying question. Those are ways that people find a sense of purpose for their individual lives. None of them are a reason for the existence of the universe. But to really know if one's individual life purpose were truly legitimate and not just a result of cultural or instinctual sensations, then it seemed to me that you would need to know that greater reason of existence first in order to define your individual life purpose in the correct context. And this was an important thing to me because my gut instinct was telling me that what I was observing in the world, in mainstream lifestyles and my possible future, was not very logical. Because, one day we'll be dead. Whatever accomplishments that we've achieved will be forgotten, and for those whose work is remembered or appreciated by some future generations, well, even those future generations will one day be gone. The sun will one day engulf the earth, and the universe will one day implode on itself. Those are facts. So in the end, from a completely physical perspective, nothing will last forever, and beyond that, even if there are some other dimensions or some sort of spiritual world that lasts for eternity, that doesn't resolve the issue of why. What is the purpose or reason for existence of the universe itself? And resolving this issue to me as a teenager seemed so fundamental of a need. I couldn't see how anyone could make any good, rational decision about what to do with their life if they didn't know the big picture. And trying to consciously resolve this issue really caused me several years of mental turmoil, living with this unresolved ontological dilemma. I started seeing others as just living their lives in ignorance, and at the extreme, it got to the point where suicide seemed like the only logical action in this life. But if you're experiencing this, before you go blow your brains out, I want to share with you a few of my thoughts on this subject that I've had over the years, now that I'm more than twice the age. The first thing I want to suggest is to keep in mind the limitations of human language. Language, or words, are nothing more than symbols of ideas. Supposing that there is a, quote, meaning of life, do you think it might be reasonable to say that our relatively primitive language might not be capable of communicating or transferring that knowledge or idea in words? And taking that a step further, isn't it a bit unreasonable to expect that the human mind could even grasp every concept or phenomena of this universe? Even with the greatest scientific human minds in history, it seems like the more we've learned about the nature of the universe, the less we know. For centuries, science has evolved and progressed by describing and explaining physical observations. We can calculate what it takes to launch a rocket into space, but honestly, we don't even really know what gravity is. Likewise, we can build an atomic bomb or a nuclear bomb or power a metropolis, but we don't really even know what energy is. We can label it with a word, we can describe it, measure it, use it, but we really don't know what it is. And at this point, it seems like much of science is branching into a bunch of unproven and maybe unprovable theories. So getting back to our question, what is the meaning of life? Do you think it might be possible that the human mind is not capable of consciously grasping the answer to that question? Yes, the human mind is amazingly powerful, but it may be a little arrogant or short-sighted to think that it's as powerful as whatever intelligence is behind the universe as a whole. And that brings me to consideration number 3. Suppose for a minute that there is something more to this existence than what we see with our eyes. Suppose we are in some way spiritual beings, maybe in a process of spiritual evolution on a much greater scale than what we're currently consciously aware of. Do you think that maybe in regard to the question, what is the meaning of life, that there might be some value in temporarily forgetting the answer to that question during our time here on Earth? It reminds me of the quote, and you might consider the possibility, that we are not necessarily physical beings looking for a spiritual experience here, but perhaps we're spiritual beings who have come here for a physical experience. I mean, think about it. Would this roller coaster of a life be as interesting of an adventure if we knew all the answers? Perhaps there's that or another reason that we've chosen to temporarily forget the big picture. Have you ever seen a movie that was about some sort of human drama where the characters struggled, maybe even suffered, but in watching it as a movie and seeing the big picture from an outside observer's perspective, that there was a message to it and maybe even a kind of beauty to it? Do you think it's possible that we may one day look back on our own lives with that kind of perspective? And also, one last thing I want to mention relates back to the ability or inability of our conscious minds to grasp the meaning of life. Notice that when I say mind, I specify conscious mind, meaning the thinking, intellectual part of you. Compare that to what your whole mind does in regulating the functions of your body, synchronizing your breathing and heartbeat, cellular processes, and all the other millions of things that it takes to keep you ticking in every moment and surviving in your environment. By comparison, your conscious mind is a relatively weak thing, as powerful as it is. And as massively powerful as your subconscious mind is, there are many religions and spiritual teachings that point to the possibility that our individual body-mind is just part of an even greater mind. And even science now in quantum physics seems to be suggesting that there is no real separation between ourselves and what we perceive to be outside ourselves. So consider the possibility that if there were a God or a creator or a supreme being of some sort that had the answer to the question, what is the meaning of life, that we may in fact be closely connected to or even at one with that being, or more accurately, of the same substance, of the same mind. And I'm not mentioning this just to be philosophical, and I don't want to talk religion, because mainstream religion is so often just superficial word knowledge which is easily tainted by ulterior motives. But I mention it because in my several years of searching for answers, this is where my only contentment has come. That while our conscious minds may be far too limited to grasp and comprehend certain concepts, there's a part of us that knows the answers already. There's a part of us that's one with or of that God or creator or universal mind, whatever you want to call it with our limited language. If some part of us is also part of that greater one universal mind, then perhaps there's a way to tap into or align ourselves with the knowledge of that universal mind. And while I'm not here to tell you that I know the meaning of life or that I know there is one, the closest I've come to such understanding has been through what I saw as aligning with the knowledge of that greater mind, which I feel I've been successful at through meditation, through stilling the conscious mind and aligning the whole mind with whatever knowledge is desired. And in regards to the meaning of life, answers haven't come in language or even a conscious understanding, but rather in a sort of knowing, in a feeling of knowing. It's something that the conscious, intellectual mind can't necessarily grasp. So at this point, I really wouldn't expect to read about it in a book or to be told from a wise master. But when you feel it, you realize that that type of knowing is much, much more powerful and beneficial than anything you could have ever read about or been told about in words. Okay, assuming that the considerations I've mentioned so far have been sufficient to open you to the possibility of there being a meaning of life, and that you now have a reason to endure the ontological anxiety a little longer, I also want to say that if your experience has been anything like mine was, there's a good chance that your ontological anxiety is closely connected to other anxieties in your life. And what I mean is that as a human being, if you were happy with life, you probably wouldn't be suffering from the question, what is the meaning of life? Or at least you wouldn't be bothered by the intellectual lack of such understanding. So while it may seem that the meaning of life is what's bugging you, it's also likely that something else is bugging you, which is causing you to question the meaning of life. And I'm not going to suggest that you bury the question and seek the bliss of ignorance like most of the world does, but what I am suggesting is that in addition to meditation, as you start to make your life more into a reflection of what you want and what feels right and makes you happy, and your intuition will tell you what that is, that as you do this, I think there's a good chance that the conscious ungraspability of the meaning of life won't torment you so much. And instead, it will probably become more of a beautiful mystery for your smaller conscious mind once the greater part of you just knows. Alright, I know this video is not for everyone, but hopefully someone out there gets something from it. If you'd like to learn more about my personal approach to meditation, I have a free audio that you can listen to. If you got anything out of this video, I think you'll really enjoy that. You can find it at mc2method.org. It's totally free to listen to, and there's nothing to sign up for. Again, that's mc2method.org. Thank you for watching.